What if you were stranded, utterly alone, on an island far from anywhere, haunted by whispers of pirates and the shadows of enemies? How long could you survive? But survival isn't the only battle. How long could you hold on to your sanity? And the strangest question of all, after escaping, would a part of you yearn to go back? Welcome back to World Time Capsule. Today we're diving into the incredible true story of a man whose life inspired one of the most famous books ever written. You've likely heard of Robinson Crusoe, seen the movies, read the book, or at least know the name. But the real man, Alexander Selkirk, lived an even wilder, harsher, and perhaps more psychologically complex life. Forget the fictional embellishments for a moment. This is the raw story of endurance, rebellion, isolation, and a strange longing for the very place that imprisoned him. Our story begins in 1676, in the small village of Lower Largo, Scotland. Alexander Selkirk was born the seventh son of a humble shoemaker. Times were turbulent. Scotland was independent, but political unrest simmered, culminating in the Glorious Revolution of 1688. Alexander grew up in this atmosphere of chaos, and maybe that chaos seeped into him. Young Alex was difficult, rebellious, quarrelsome, constantly clashing with family and neighbors. His father hoped he'd follow the family trade, shoemaking. And in a strange way, Alex would end up working with leather, goat leather specifically, but not how his father imagined. His rebellious nature eventually landed him in serious trouble. After causing a disturbance in church, he was summoned before the church court and found guilty. Facing punishment and likely fed up with village life, Alex made a decisive choice. He ran away to sea, but not just as a simple sailor. His goal? To become a privateer. Now, what's authorized piracy, as the text called it? During wartime, like the War of Spanish Succession raging between England and France, governments would issue letters of marque to private ships. This essentially licensed them to attack and plunder enemy merchant vessels. It was a way for nations to disrupt enemy trade and for rough-and-tumble sailors, often little more than thugs, to get rich legally. Sort of. It turned criminal potential into a state-sanctioned weapon. For a restless spirit like Selkirk, this life seemed perfect. Starting around age 17, he spent years raiding Spanish and French ships. He thrived on the adventure. By 1703, now 27 and a seasoned hand, he joined a major privateering expedition led by the famous English explorer and privateer William Dampier. Dampier was a legend. He'd explored parts of Australia and New Guinea. He would play a crucial role in Selkirk's story. In September 1703, two ships, the St. George captained by Dampier and the Cinque Ports, initially captained by Charles Pickering, set sail from Kinsale, Ireland. Selkirk was assigned to the Cinque Ports as the sailing master. Trouble wasn't far behind. Pickering died at sea, and command fell to his lieutenant, Thomas Stradling, a young, apparently disliked and perhaps incompetent captain. Selkirk, with his experience and likely abrasive personality, soon clashed with him. Being marooned wasn't an uncommon punishment for rebellious sailors back then. Often, it was a death sentence, left with nothing, maybe a pistol to end it when starvation and thirst became unbearable. It was the ultimate punishment for mutiny or theft. After some initial successes and failures, including a failed attack in Panama, tensions aboard the Cinque Ports simmered. The ship was leaking badly and desperately needed repairs. In September 1704, they stopped at the Juan Fernandez Islands, a remote archipelago in the Pacific, about 400 miles off the coast of Chile. Here the crew rested, resupplied, and attempted repairs. This is where the fateful argument erupted. The ship needed caulking, sealing the gaps between the wooden planks with pitch and fibers to make it watertight. Selkirk, the experienced sailing master, insisted the repairs weren't finished. He argued passionately that putting back to sea in the ship's current state was suicide. He believed the Cinque Ports would sink. In the heat of the moment, perhaps fueled by his long-standing friction with Stradling. Selkirk declared he'd rather be left alone on the island than sail on that death trap. Captain Stradling, perhaps eager to be rid of the troublesome Selkirk, or simply sticking to his authority, called his bluff. He ordered the ship to sail, leaving Selkirk behind. Maybe Selkirk had second thoughts, but it was too late. He wasn't left entirely destitute, though. He had his sea chest containing clothes, bedding, a rifle, gunpowder and shot, tobacco, an axe, a knife, a kettle or pitcher, navigational instruments, some books, and crucially, a Bible. And so began his ordeal. 4 years and 4 months of total isolation. The initial shock and despair must have been immense. His clothes quickly rotted in the tropical climate. But Selkirk was resourceful. He built 2 huts from wood and grass. He learned to make fire by rubbing sticks together. He hunted the wild goats that populated the island, becoming incredibly swift and agile, running barefoot over the rocks. He fashioned new clothes from their skins, sewing them with a nail he'd sharpened. Remember, his father wanted him to work with leather. Here he was, fulfilling that destiny in the most unexpected way. Loneliness was a constant battle. He faced practical problems too. Hordes of rats gnawed at his feet and stole his food while he slept. His ingenious solution? He tamed some of the island's feral cats by feeding them goat meat. They became his companions and his pest control. His mental health frayed. He sang psalms and read his Bible aloud, partly for solace, partly just to hear a human voice, even his own. It's said this period forged a deep religious devotion he never quite replicated later in life. The island itself was relatively bountiful. It had freshwater springs, timber, edible plants like wild turnips and plums, likely introduced by earlier sailors, and plenty of meat from goats, seals, and sea lions. It had been used as a stopover point for pirates and privateers for decades. Selkirk likely expected rescue within months. But months turned into years. He saw ships pass occasionally, but none responded to his signal fires. Twice, Spanish ships anchored. Being English, and likely recognizing them as the enemy, Selkirk knew they meant capture or death. When they spotted him and fired, he fled deep into the island's interior, hiding until they left. Imagine the crushing disappointment. What Selkirk didn't know during his lonely vigil was that his fears about the Cinque Ports had been tragically prophetic. The ship did sink shortly after leaving him, off the coast of what's now Colombia or Ecuador. Most of the crew drowned. Captain Stradling and a few survivors were captured by the Spanish and imprisoned. Selkirk's stubborn rebellion had saved his life. Finally, on February 2nd, 1709, after 4 years and 4 months, his salvation arrived. 2 English privateering ships, the Duke and the Duchess, captained by Woodes Rogers, anchored offshore. They saw a light on the island and sent a boat ashore, expecting Spanish resistance. Instead, they found a figure clad in goatskins, looking utterly wild, who could barely speak English anymore from disuse. Initially, Rogers was wary. But then came a moment of incredible fortune. Who was the pilot aboard Rogers' fleet? None other than William Dampier, Selkirk's old expedition leader. Dampier recognized the wild man as Alexander Selkirk and vouched for him. Selkirk was rescued. Woodes Rogers documented the encounter in his voyage narrative, describing Selkirk's wild appearance, his physical fitness from chasing goats, and his difficulty speaking. Selkirk's knowledge of the island proved valuable, helping the crews recover from scurvy with fresh food and water. He rejoined the privateering life, eventually becoming second mate on one of the ships and participating in further raids. In 1711, the expedition returned to England. Back in Britain, Selkirk became a minor celebrity. His story was published and likely provided the core inspiration for Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe a few years later. He lived comfortably for a while, but the call of the sea, or perhaps the restlessness forged in isolation, was too strong. By 1717, he joined the Royal Navy, rising through the ranks. but his life would end where he seemed most suited, at sea. In 1721, while serving as a lieutenant aboard HMS Weymouth off the coast of West Africa, Alexander Selkirk died, likely from yellow fever, aged just 45. And here's the final poignant twist. In his later years, Selkirk reportedly told friends that his time alone on the island, despite the hardship, was the happiest of his life. He missed his kingdom, his absolute freedom, the peace he found amidst the solitude. He even spoke of wanting to return. So, that's the true story of Alexander Selkirk. A far cry from the more romanticized Robinson Crusoe, wouldn't you say? No Man Friday, no cannibals in this version, just one man against nature, his own mind, and the ghosts of passing ships. What do you think? Could you endure 4 years alone? What kept Selkirk sane? Or did he lose a part of it forever? And what do you think are the most obvious differences between Selkirk's real story and the fictional Robinson Crusoe we all know? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'm really curious to read what you pick out. If you enjoyed this dive into a real-life survival epic here on World Time Capsule, please give this video a like. It really helps the channel out. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already for more journeys into hidden history. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next capsule.